Today, I want to tell you about the most genius plan ever carried out to breach a bank vault security in France. A plan that literally made the investigators talk to themselves about the events. Today's story happened at a bank, which is one of the most famous banks in France and has branches all over the world. The branch that was robbed was in the French city of Nice. At that time, most wealthy people used to hide their money, gold, and jewelry in the bank. The bank would receive all these valuable items and place them in safety deposit boxes inside the vault. Everyone was reassured, because they knew this bank had one of the most secure vaults in all of France. Yet what happened on the 19th of June 1976 was something that had never happened before. This day started like any ordinary day. The bank employees went to work, and there was nothing to suggest that something strange was about to happen. Everything was fine until the bank manager and some employees went to the vault to get some cash to process customer transactions. The main vault door opened fine, but the inner vault door wouldn't open. They tried many times to open it but couldn't. Still, they weren't worried. This door was over 70 years old, weighed more than 20 tons, and they were used to having problems with it. But that day, they took a long time trying to open it while many customers gathered at the bank's door, everyone waiting for the employees to open the vault. So the bank manager called the company that manufactured the door, which was also responsible for its maintenance, and told them, "I need you to send me a worker to open this door for us." A worker came and tried to open the door again and again, but the door wouldn't open. He checked all parts of the door, and they were all working fine, but it still refused to open. Of course, the number of bank customers had grown large, all gathered at the bank's door, and they started to worry. No one understood what was happening. Finally, the worker requested an additional expert from the company. After the expert arrived and they tried hard, the explanation they came up with was that something inside was holding the door and preventing it from opening. Of course, this explanation was ridiculous and no one believed it, because this vault had no entrance except this door. So how could it be stuck from the inside? Later, they decided to make an opening in the wall next to the vault. They wanted to make a small hole and look inside the vault to see what was preventing the door from opening. They worked until 3 p.m. because the wall was thick. They made a small hole that allowed them to look inside. When the worker stuck his head in to look, he said the last thing everyone expected: the bank had been robbed. The bank manager immediately called the police, and within minutes the bank was full of police officers, including every important police officer in the city of Nice, because they knew they were going to start investigating one of the biggest theft operations in history. So they enlarged the hole, and the police entered through it. They discovered that the thief had taken all the money in the vault, plus 400 safety deposit boxes that contained all kinds of valuable items. The strangest thing was that they found a phrase written on the wall in bold letters: "Without weapons, without violence, without hate." Now, let me tell you the story, because I'm sure you'll like it. The question that was on my mind the whole time was, how did the thief manage to enter and exit the vault? The answer to this question was clear to the police, because there was a hole inside the vault leading to a tunnel, and this tunnel was connected to the underground sewer system. The tools the thief used to enter the vault were all left there. Everything was left behind, indicating it was a large operation. There were 27 gas cylinders they used to power the flame, and there were air purification devices to pump oxygen into the tunnel, plus an electrical cable over 800 meters long. It was clear they had been planning the operation for months, if not more. Honestly, the long time they took for planning and execution was worth it, because estimates say they stole money and gold worth more than 10 million. This was the biggest bank robbery in history at the time, described as the heist of the century, and most international newspapers wrote about it. The bank announced a reward worth $250,000 for anyone who gave them information that could lead them to the thief. This wasn't just the biggest robbery operation, it was also the biggest investigation operation for the French police. Professional investigators were summoned from all over France. They began the investigation by questioning thousands of people, bank employees, and all bank customers who had deposits and access to this vault. Even people living in the bank's vicinity were questioned. The result they came up with was some evidence proving that a known gang called the Sewer Rats was involved in the operation. This gang was famous for using sewer tunnels to carry out their operations. After a long period of investigation, the investigators were monitoring several suspects, knowing they were members of the Sewer Rats gang, but they found no evidence confirming that any of them had the ability to plan and execute such a large operation. So they kept them under surveillance. The police just wanted the mastermind who planned the operation. The first clue that could lead them to him came in early October. Two suspects under surveillance went to sell some gold, and the police confirmed that the gold they sold was from the items stolen from the bank. They immediately arrested them. Now, the police had two gang members. They said, "We'll pressure them, and they'll confess about as many guys as possible. And one by one, we'll reach the mastermind." The police had the authority to do anything, including bringing in the relatives of these criminals and falsely accusing them of crimes they didn't commit to pressure them to confess. They had the authority to detain anyone they suspected, investigate them, and use any means to extract confessions, even if these means weren't legal. In other words, the state was on fire. After all these procedures, the police had a new name. One of the two they arrested confessed about someone named Albert, who worked as a photographer, and told them that Albert was the mastermind behind the entire operation. The police immediately went to Albert and told him, "So-and-so confessed against you," and they arrested him. Albert was shocked at the time and told them, "I don't know anything about this matter." The police also thought this photographer didn't match the image they had drawn in their minds of the mastermind. He was also a bit old and appeared innocent. When they asked about him, many people said he lived a simple life and was romantic and peaceful. The police weren't convinced he was the one who planned the entire operation, but they detained him anyway. The investigators began questioning the photographer. He kept telling them he was innocent. The interrogations continued for hours and hours. The police used every possible method and trick to get a confession from him, legal and illegal methods, but the photographer remained insistent on his innocence. While they were investigating him, the police were raiding the farm where he lived with his wife to search it. There they found a collection of unlicensed weapons and grenades. Here the police decided to pressure him and told him they would charge his wife with possession of prohibited weapons and grenades, that they would set up a case and charge that would stick and throw her in prison to spend the rest of her life there. They knew Albert loved his wife and wouldn't abandon her and wouldn't let them do that to her. Here, Albert had no choice but to talk. He confessed that he was the mastermind behind the entire operation and gave them precise information. He told them how he planned everything. Literally, he said that the idea came to him 2 years ago. One of his neighbors worked at this bank and told him the vault had no alarm system. Albert then went to the bank and rented a box inside the vault. The bank gave people who had safety deposit boxes inside the vault permission to enter without guards, so they could have their comfort and freedom. Indeed, he entered the vault with a camera and started photographing every corner of the vault and taking precise notes. Thousands of safety deposit boxes were inside the vault, so he needed a plan that would give him a long time to get inside and break all these boxes at his leisure. He thought a lot and found no better way than the sewer tunnels. The city of Nice had a very large sewer tunnel network, but there was no tunnel under the bank. So Albert said he could dig a tunnel under the bank from the nearest tunnel network to it. He told some guys he knew about his plan, and they liked the idea a lot and said, "What will you need? Men and tools will take care of it." They decided to help him in exchange for a large share of what he would steal. Indeed, they started. Albert put a group of guys to dig and gave them radio devices. He put guys outside to watch in case they saw any police. The digging operation was very difficult because they were digging with primitive tools, so no sound would come out. The place was very narrow and the air was hot, which made it much harder for the diggers. One of them couldn't bear such conditions and fainted while digging. Here, Albert said he was forced to divide the team into 2 groups. Each team would work for 10 minutes, while the second team rested. They had a doctor for emergencies. Because they needed light to continue digging, they brought an air purification device and a long cable they extended from a nearby garage to run the ventilation and lighting device. This made the working conditions much better. Albert was confident that the success of the plan depended on the workers' comfort during the digging, so he did everything to make the operation easier for them. After 9 weeks, in early July, they finally managed to reach the vault wall. Everyone was happy, but Albert knew there was an important part they still hadn't done. They had to penetrate a concrete wall 30 centimeters thick. It wasn't impossible, But this required electric drilling tools, and these are loud. He was afraid the sound would reach outside, so he went outside and asked them to drill so he could hear if there was any sound. The good thing was, there was no sound, and they were able that night to dig half the wall's thickness. They decided to continue digging and set the operation date for July 17. They chose this day because it was the first day of vacation and the bank would be empty, giving them enough time to do everything they wanted. Indeed, that night they returned to the tunnel and finished digging the wall. Only a little was left. But the digging operation took much longer than Albert expected. They stayed until 2 a.m. on Sunday morning before they could enter the vault. Finally, they entered. The first thing they did was weld the door from the inside, so they would have enough time to escape if anyone discovered them and tried to open the door. Then they started breaking the locks of the boxes one after another. They were amazed by what they saw: money, gold, jewelry, and everything they had dreamed of. They celebrated there to the point that they made a dinner feast inside the vault and ate like kings from a golden plate in one of the boxes. Imagine that on that day, an armored truck came to deposit funds in the bank vault. The truck had a bag full of money, and they threw it through an opening in the ceiling that went directly to the vault without opening the vault door, because it was a weekend holiday and the bank was closed. This was a routine thing the bank always did. Of course, this was a gift from heaven for Albert and the guys with him. They kept breaking box locks, and 7 hours passed while they were inside the vault. They managed to open 400 out of 4,000 boxes, which was much more than they needed. On Monday at 5 a.m., Albert decided they had to leave because there were only 4 hours left before the bank would open and work would begin. Before they left, Albert took the spray paint he brought with him and wrote on the wall, "Without weapons, without violence, without hate." Now one last thing remained, for him to tell them where the stolen money was. Albert told them he would cooperate with them and tell them all the details as long as they didn't harm his wife. They agreed and announced they had caught the thief. They started sending him to the judge to explain in detail how the plan went and confess everything before the court. He would meet with the judge every week in his office. He was very cooperative. At the last meeting, he went to the judge's office as usual and started explaining to him in boring detail, "We dug from here and entered from here until we reached here." The judge was concentrating on him. Suddenly, Albert ran to the window in the office and jumped from it. The judge and lawyer were shocked and couldn't believe he did that. The judge's office was on the first floor. Albert jumped and fell on a car parked under the window. Its owner was waiting for him on a motorcycle, picked him up, and escaped with him. From that day, Albert completely disappeared. The police couldn't find him or what he stole from the bank. He was actually misleading them the whole time and didn't give them any details about the location of the gold and money. The only thing the police knew was that he paid $6,000 to the owner of the car he fell on when he jumped from the window. After that, he continued his life sending photos and letters to the investigators through newspapers and magazines. His wife and love of his life decided she didn't want to live her whole life on the run with him, so she decided to stay in her place and work at her previous job as a nurse. In the end, they couldn't find out where he was until he died at age 89 from lung cancer. Guys and girls, this was our story for today. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in a new video.